podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
Yeah, man. So one of these days is when I don't know if anybody's going to see the little 30-second stock footage that comes with this that we experimenting and developing with, but they're going to be like, oh man, they moved to some other stuff. Now it got robots in it. Or like, you know what I'm saying? Go like all of our childhood superheroes, like Alpina Man, brother with the dope tracksuit, you know what I'm saying? That one girl you had met at the Alpine's Landing, but you ain't never see her again.
That's right.
But that day was a great day. You was like, oh man, yeah, this might be the one.
Yeah, you just never talk to him ever.
You ain't never gonna see that girl again.
No.
But it was cool while it lasted. So we back together, and I thought in light of one, the setup. See, my beloved Knicks, they got Indiana right where they wanted them. See, they got down 0-2, right? So you could flip it on them. You know what I mean? So you could turn this thing around. You know what I'm saying? But I thought maybe take a little time, talk a little of the NBA and fun and other things. And in light of, I think, in the last 2 years, I've been coaxed back into full active Knicks fandom. And as I like to say, I wanted to love again and bask in the joy of rooting for your team, and also the like, man, these dudes about to go ahead and disappoint me. They're gonna break my heart. They're gonna break my heart. So, but yesterday, at the time of recording this, Cat, you know what I'm saying, beat the allegations, or at least put the allegations off for a couple weeks, showed up in the fourth quarter. Like had a fourth quarter moment. He still does weird.
Hey man, Dominican man, shouts out to, he put that S on his chest, man.
Yeah, man.
Access his Washington Heights background or whatever to come over and be a superhero for the Knicks from time to time. Yeah. Then he goes missing, but Yeah.
Well, it's weird. So, I mean, as we like to do, I could just make my Knicks jokes. I mean, there's a couple things. One, though, it is interesting. This wasn't where we were supposed to be at the Eastern Conference Finals, right? We was supposed to, Boston was supposed to be heading on their way to another finals appearance, and something happened on the way to the Coliseum, so to speak, and then Cleveland didn't get it done, and and I would say overall for who's there on the West and the East it's none of the old guard, right? None of the right. There's no LeBron, there's no Steph, there's no Harden, there's no Kawhi, there's no I'm trying to think. There's somebody else old. No Kevin Durant. No Giannis. Like, yeah, no Joker. I mean, he ain't that old, but he's old enough. I think he's still more of the closer to this group than LeBron and some of them. But right. Basically, it's a transitional moment. Right, and the Knicks being in the finals and one of the like NBA teams that have like a real fan base, like a fan base that is ridiculous, or at least looks ridiculous when you see clips of it online, and you know what I'm saying, and have endured through great suffering in some ways for a major market team. Like, so I've said a lot of rambling, but I guess I wanted to get some of your take on, I'm saying this Eastern Conference Finals, and I'm calling them, at least if we get this second win, the true grit. Knicks had to scrap back from down 20. In Indiana, right. They just they were front runners. You know what I'm saying? When everything was working, they was all snapping and cracking and bebopping and scatting. You know what I'm saying? As George Costanza once said. You know what I'm saying? But now we came back here. So what were some of your thoughts just with this NBA Finals and some of the other stuff?
Well, I think
Eastern Conference Finals, not finals.
Yeah, the Conference Finals. I think the first thing is, you're right. The Knicks are the closest thing to a football or soccer-like fan base in the NBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a tradition that people like in the Lakers for a variety of reasons. There's a tradition of Celtics fans. They don't get too far out in New England, although there are some, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's most recently been about the superstars, not the team, right? It's been like the back of the jersey versus the front of the jersey.
Yeah.
That the NBA's had that for a while, but I think LeBron moving around, KD moving around, different stars moving around definitely made it about the back of the jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, what we have now is a situation where the last four teams, and I'll go back to the Knicks, and how the Knicks have like a fan base, even if they don't win.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like someone like in Man U or Man City or Barcelona. It really gets to that kind of space. And it does look kind of wild when you don't win. Like the levels of expression by Knicks fans and like behavior at Madison Square Garden is wild. You know what I mean? For a team that hasn't done well relatively recently, like it's like your annoying friend that pops back out. Like, I will say this to people here probably, it's almost like if the Steelers ever do well again, people like, don't forget who got 6 rings. Even though Tom Brady got 6 rings now, if not more.
Right, he did.
Right? He himself has more rings than any other franchise.
Yeah.
But do not let them get 5 and 3. There will be Steelers Super Bowl songs played.
Here we go.
Here we go, Steelers.
Like the remix. You know what I'm saying?
So I think, it's unique in that I think also the idea, and I've been kind of put this in the context of Spike Lee in his newest movie, and him just talking about his role as a Knicks fan, like regardless, and kind of how that plays into his actual, filming and his directing,
mm-hmm.
and how again, like New York is somewhat unique in having representatives of the team that are just fans. Mm-hmm. New York had LA had the Jack Nicholson kind of play, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just what makes that different. And then when it goes to the league, to your point, most of the big name players are out, and it kind of reflects a changing and shifting NBA where there's like extreme parity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think as much parity probably as the hockey now. Hockey hasn't always had parity,
mm-hmm.
but they're probably running 1 and 2, and then baseball and football running far behind for different reasons that we'll talk about. But I think we're at a unique place where it's like any team can win, right? And everybody gets hurt, right? Another part of this thing is everybody gets hurt in the NBA now. Getting hurt is 100% happening. If you think about it, like there's very few players you can be like, oh, they never spent like a lot of time off the court. Yeah. So as a thing, if someone gets hurt at the end of the year or during the playoffs, that can actually shift the entire structure of who can win. Now, this 100% injury thing, some point someone gets to the bottom of like how this occurs. Everybody get hurt. Most they never had this industry get these injuries, like, you know what I mean? So I think that's a part of it. I think And for something I'll kind of keep until I'll kind of try to park it a little bit, but kind of do some inferences. The talent is more easily spread across. Like there's a lot of different talent that's out there. That's not, again, like the one player or the two player or the idea of like the three players coming together and creating a super team. I think that's generally over. I don't know, and get your take on that, but I haven't seen much that says that you'll have like a super team thing that pervades the NBA.
Yeah, I mean the age, just the structure that they have now, it prevents the ability to trade or sign.
Yeah.
I think quite frankly, when you look at it, it's almost been like quirks in the structure that have created sort of the window that we have, like the LeBron Wade Bosh thing kind of only happens because of sort of the transition between what was it, like the previous rookie scale, and then like those players being able to basically do their contracts different so that they'd even have the possibility to be like free agents at the same time. Because and then the league, at least coming out of the 90s, and there's people who are much more qualified to be like all scholarly about this. So, you come here for the witty banter and the context, you know what I'm saying? So don't be all well, actually, this salary cap, you know what I mean? Like, don't make me have to come find you. But what I do know is you get that moment, right, where those players could try to angle to be free agents at the same time, and even at the time being like because the previous idea coming out of the 90s was sort of like the players are always going to take all the money, like whatever money you offer them, they're going to take it. And then it was like, well, actually, some players are kind of like, man, no, I'm gonna still make the money. I'm gonna count them on the back end or later. And then you get the Durant going to the Warriors, where like the transition between the two what's the name contracts and and his rights, that then he could be a free agent at this, much to the chagrin of some folks, where you can go, I'm gonna go play with the other dudes and make this damn evil empire of a team that is, without me was great and competitive and had one of the best seasons in basketball. But with me, it's going to be almost impossible for anyone to like beat us in 7 games, right? Like realistically. And then you get, like to this moment now though, where the contract has still been like you need like a transcendent like player that's a real star. Then you need somebody on the team that's like damn good, you know what I'm saying? Right. High up there. Maybe they're not a transcendent star, but they're good enough to be an all-star. And then you kind of need like another person that does something exceptional, right? Most of the time. And the league's ongoing thing of sort of late transition in the structure, so that it's quite punitive, like to the degree that even, the rumblings are like, can Boston wait till Tatum gets healthy with this unit, and do they need to break this whole thing up? Is there any way for teams that have very expensive salaries are they going to be able to, if they build up a team that's good enough to win, are they going to be able to pay to keep all those players?
Right.
And it's I don't know if that's good for the basketball. I think the basketball overall is like some of the best that we've had. There's things style wise that I would like a little bit more dunking and people trying to, do things in the paint. Not that stuff happens in the paint, but it just seems, I don't know. I feel like I watched, I guess I would say my Nick watching frustration. They seem to sometimes not be able to grab the ball, like the number of players. Right. Like, wow, you got to put it on the deck, and you look how I feel when I remember playing basketball with people who were like clearly better basketball players, and you might have a moment of lack of confidence. Like, man, I don't know if I could dribble. I don't know if I could dribble penetrate on them. I might need to I can see the tension. Like it's like, oh man, I gotta my first move didn't work. Yeah, I mean, it is like, how don't y'all know how to dribble? Y'all all play, but I know that's the mesmerizing thing about professional sports is that like even like really good players, like the best players on the planet, get in the room where it's like, oh man, these guys are better than me, and I'm a little nervous or I'm a little off my. So to see the league, see these teams that have like in some ways they got like a star player or a really good player, and then they maybe have like a second player that's like a pretty good, like a pretty like equal level player, but maybe not a like, oh man, this is the greatest player in the league. I mean, like
right.
We're about to have this at this point. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this will be 7 years of a new team winning the title, right, from the previous year. So, which
and that's what I was saying about like parity. It is like extreme parity. It went from a LeBron team winning 4 championships in what 8 years or something,
yeah,
to the Warriors winning 4, and I think what broke that up, the Raptors.
So the Warriors. Warriors win basically 3 out of 4, losing the one to Cleveland. Then the Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Warriors again. So it's basically 3 years between. Which I still contend that if I think Phoenix beats that Warriors team, if they don't lose to the whatever weird the hell happened in that in that series with the Mavs that they lost. Because I honestly don't think. Honestly, I think the Celtics should have beat the Warriors, but Steph on them and said, "I'm Steph, and I've been in these before, and y'all haven't, and also you don't score this way where you just can like the structure the way you score that you could just take over part of a game and go, nah, I'm just about to score like 20-something points and just take this thing over quickly, right? And assertively, but this just is speculation doesn't count for real life. The Warriors won; they're the champs. In my mind, they're actually not the champs.
So man!
Right. But it's a wild thing because like if you look before that, I mean, you basically you got San Antonio Lakers, Mavericks, breaking through and as a team that was a part of the cohort of teams that were the best teams of that run, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That all won. And then, but most of the time it's a couple teams back-to-back years or trading off. And then here we're going on 7 straight years of a different team. Now, all the teams that have won have been a contending team of some sort, in that window. But it is, I think, in the history of the league, it's never been the case that every year, like the 70s was the last time that there were like multiple years where a different team won, and even then the Celtics still in there for 2 of the, 2 for a double dip. You get like
you got the Blazers.
Yeah.
79. You got the Rockets.
Yeah, Blazers, Celtics, Blazers, Bullets, Sonics. Bullets. Did they win? They didn't win the title. Did they win the title? I guess they did win the title. Did that happen?
I don't
remember that. That's a typo. There's something going on here. Like Sonics and then you go Lakers, Celtics, Sixers, Celtics, Sixers, Lakers, Celtics, Lakers, Pistons, Bulls, Rockets, Bulls, San Antonio Lakers.
Right.
It's like it's the same handful of teams that are in there. But now we have this run where it's like, and it's a realistic thing to go like, oh, if you're a team that can be in the top, 8, you probably can think like, yo, it could be us. I mean, in this year, that's definitely going to be the case. I mean, one way or another, a team where the best player on the team is either in the East, a 6'2" guard who people didn't even think for sure if they could be in the NBA.
Right.
And a 6'5" guard who weirdly somehow with the way they evaluated that draft, and I mean, if you look to the other side, I think Halliburton was like the 14th pick, just on the edge of the lottery, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was also in that. I think he was in that same 2020 draft. Like,
Mhm.
Where people are like, oh, it could be good NBA players, but like not the best player on a team that's going to go to the finals.
Right. Not the MVP.
And Gilbert Alexander is the MVP.
Yeah.
That's great.
No, it's interesting to think about it because it was some juxtaposition of like, it's the reason why, even though no legacy team is in the finals or the conference finals, all ESPN talks about is LeBron and Jason Tatum. like, where's KD going? Right?
What are they going to do?
Because that's all fans want to hear about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the NFL in baseball are unique in this because the NFL actually needs the dynasties to even to be the bad guy, very similar to what I talk about in baseball. So now people's perspective is the Eagles are kind of a dynasty. Then you got Mahomes that's ready to be there. Then you got these other two teams that are all primed, right? It isn't really structured for the Tennessee Titans to win the Super Bowl. It can happen.
Yeah.
But
like on a 1 year, just like, oh man, they had a great season. They just came out.
Like, it's very different than basketball, where you could say somebody had a really good season. They were not primed to win, and they won, or we thought someone else was going to win, and one of these four teams was going to win, which probably other than Oklahoma City, most people didn't have them on their card.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then even with them, it was they have proven to be better than they thought, but they also, didn't get past. They only got to the second round. Was it last year? And so would they? They did the thing, beating Denver. You know what I mean? But almost. You got to like earn your stripes, so to speak. And for the league at the moment to have, having only the Knicks being the only, major market team, large market team on the thing. But, it's funny because even it's in the broadcast, like Indiana, despite the market size, like if you look at it in terms of the history of the league, where they were a great ABA team. I was a child. I was born in 1976, so I didn't see a single ABA Indiana Pacers game.
Neither did any of us.
But by the time you would get to our young adult phase with Reggie Miller and Chuck Person, you know what I'm saying, with Rifleman, and then the 90s, like they've been a continual antagonists of greatness, so to speak, right? Like they've been right there. They've gone to the finals as a franchise, so they're not and they've proven to be a team that keeps putting it back together. As crazy as it, like you'd be like, oh man, Pacers, it's probably the end of that, and then it's like, oh, Pacers back in here being a competitive team. Like you gotta tip hat. As far as competitiveness, they've done a much better job over the last 20 years than my beloved Knicks. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I didn't have to. I wouldn't have had to go on a hiatus emotionally from if I was a Pacers, but I guess there's probably a Pacers fan like Justice, the balance of the balance, we were supposed to win and and they probably don't want to hear that from a Knicks fan. But it is interesting that a team like that is right there again at the precipice, and you would say like not with a pair of lead players that you would say like, yeah, Siakam, he's right there. He's like the number 3 power forward or big or wing, whatever they call a Siakam type player at this day and time. But there they are. I guess also tip hat to Rick Carlisle. Like, he's proven to be a coach who can keep getting you, a good team out of whatever players that he has. Because you got Dallas team and he was there before with Indiana,
back in the 90s, yeah. So, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts with his teams, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think is an interesting component of that you would take from these last 4 teams. All of them, the whole are greater than the sum of its parts, right? Like, loyal Knicks fan here, I know, but if you look at them, they don't necessarily look as haunting as they end up being in the game, right? You just read it on paper. On paper, it's like, okay, cool, right? But like
Look,
they end up being much better than they are on paper.
look, I'll be transparent. I was like, oh man, these dudes let this game get away from them. This thing is how we gonna get
I
how we gonna
turned
get
it
back
off.
into this? How we gonna get back into this? Like I don't see the scoring, and then I guess they got back in on getting stops, right? They're like really just playing better defense. And because because they got a whole bunch of dudes. I'm like, yo, whose play is this? Like, who we running the play for here? And those fouls, little. I'm just saying, NBA. We ain't come here to watch the refs, man. I'm just saying. All right, anybody come here to watch the refs? Like, we're here to watch the players, man. You gotta swallow that thing, man. Like, what you doing? Yeah, he definitely gave him a check, man. Come on, man. Jordan rules, man. Keep the stars on the court, man. I'm sure the call is going in. The call is going in. Hey, man, don't you give me another game in this series where the two best players on one of the team is in 4 and 5 foul trouble in the first half. Like, get. I don't care how stupid they are. Just Karl Anthony Towns is the world's leader in. What are you doing? Why's your body over there?
Yeah,
get out the way.
Bad foul when he looks incredulous, like I don't know what happened either. You don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Get out of there. And so I'm just saying, it's just a little fishy, and I'm so this is where I'm gonna go to I probably don't know what I'm talking about, but it's all right. I'm just my show, say what I want. All right. My one weird thing with the way basketball players play these days is the amount of sort of like, and I don't even say that everybody got to go to Hakeem Olajuwon's, postman school, but they do weird stuff with the body, with body leverage. So like the call that gets reversed, where Towns is grabbing Halliburton's arm, but like he's grabbing Halliburton's arm because Halliburton is using his arm to push down on his arm. And I'm like, well, how are you gonna call one foul? Like, it's like incidental. It just happened. It's like, well, maybe, but I feel like you jump ball. Like I don't feel like you can't call the foul on the other guy for hooking. But I'm also like, why don't you understand how to leverage the you can't grab with that hand. Like you can put the arm there without grabbing. Like you can you can make a fist. You could flatten that thing out, like whatever you gotta do, and you can still. And the amount of players who don't seem to have I feel like I feel like if they was playing against us mere mortals in a gym, they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm about to get a bucket on you. But like against these dudes, it's like, oh, you don't got no drop step, you don't have you don't know how to straighten your body up a little bit so you can get control to bank that off the glass. It's just strange sometimes the way it's my one concern even watching last year in the Western Conference Final with Towns was the way he plays. He does weird stuff with his body when going to the rim that I'm like, where are you going? Like you're 6'12" or whatever you are. Like just go straight. He's
definitely one of those guys that he wasn't always that tall.
Yeah.
Like he still doesn't seem totally comfortable with his body. Now that's me as a Sunday league old man with the old two-step talking about the top 1% of all the athletes
basketball players on earth.
So let me just write that in.
I'm just saying though, I have perspective.
You know what I'm saying? But like it just doesn't seem that way. And I think sometimes the game does reflect like it seems like now it's lack of polish, because again, these are high performing athletes, but like maybe the way that people's games were structured prior, which kind of go into a lot of this conversation about like, but who wins MVP, right? Like, and how and why, right? When we're looking at basketball.
Yeah, but I think it's like about like the way the young people play now. Yeah. Right. Like, so, and especially in the States, which I think gets us to, the other issue that we had on the deck is like, like Jokic does he does a full assortment of like post things and like using your body and pins and rotating and like keeping the ball high, like all these things that like, I remember like we had you had, if you didn't play in like fully structured basketball, but you had the basketball section in PE, they would teach you, you got to chest pass, you got to do like this with the ball. You got to do, like, okay, thanks, coach. Like, I don't play basketball all the time. I play, but I learned, here the basics. And
right.
The you had brought this up, and it's a good observation. Like, was it the last
7 years?
7 years, yeah. The league MVP is somebody that was born outside of the United States and learned to play outside of the United States.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, and again, in some ways, one might argue taking kind of sample size and skewing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because these are some of the greatest guys in the world,
mm-hmm.
right? But I think it reflects the reality that, as we see in the Olympics, like when you think about the Olympics, you had two of the, I think it was like 4 or 5 of the top 50 players ever to play the game on the Olympic team. And they needed an unworldly performance by Steph Curry to win, to beat France.
Yeah.
Of which, besides winning, the starting 5, obviously, they play in the NBA, but like, you can't go past 5 and ask for where one of them guys are to this day.
Yeah, I mean, what's his name was it Yabusele, who was having a great series? Like, he's on the Sixers now, and he was in the league, but he wasn't. He played much better this season than he did the previous seasons. Some of the other guys.
You got Batum. I mean, you got players, and don't get me wrong at all, but like, you had the Avengers, and the Avengers needed somebody to do some crazy shit at the end to win.
Yeah.
And this whole USA versus the world games, I think people are going to find those games are not, the USA's not going to win as much as people think. And I do think there is a element of what players are learning to play where and how. Now, obviously, Embiid played at Kentucky. He played at Kentucky, right? Yeah, or the Oklahoma?
Oh, Kansas.
Okay. Well, yeah, blue. He played in Kansas for a year, I guess. SGA went to Kentucky, right? So they played in the systems, but they're not defined by the systems where I think it is. Even like the Canadians, right? Even SGA being from Hamilton, actually.
Yeah.
And then, spent time in Toronto. Like, but this has been 20 some odd years since you've been seeing professional Canadian players really show their stuff, right? So they have a system, right, that performs and gets high performing athletes to play for the Canadian team and play for those what's names, then come down here. And I just think a part of it is the AAU system. There was a big conversation around the horn, just like what is the role of AAU and how does it impact how young people learn how to play the game? Again, the people who win for MVP usually are doggedly rigorous in their fundamentals. They do a whole bunch of stuff, but they're usually really good at doing the thing that puts the ball in the basket, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how are our structures making sure young people learn fundamentals? And the other thing about getting hurt. Starting at a certain age now, kids are playing 3 games a day. Now, in some ways, we talk about, oh, man, kids used to play all day back in the day. But this is a different level of stress on the body of like 3 AAU games every other weekend.
Yeah, man. Well, not just 3 games a day. Like, you might play 6 games.
Right.
Or what I'm saying, over like 72-hour window.
Right.
You know what I mean? And including whatever practice or whatever else you did, to prep or to be ready to play, which is seems like a lot. Doesn't seem like the place that you, with depending on I always think about it like, especially in the last, as I was aging as a person that like to be, do things, participate in athletics, or lift weights, do strength stuff, martial arts, all that. Like learning, more modern ways to like warm the body, deal with joint management. Where you might have somebody out there still doing wild caveman stretches and stuff. Like, you actually shouldn't stretch before you're about to work out. You should do more of a dynamic warm up. Like I know enough about kinesthetics to know like some good trainers. Like actually, don't do that before you about to go run as hard as you can for. What I mean? Like, I'm not saying, I'm sure some folks have brought in more modern trainers and things, but the idea that like there's all these other things that have entered into the market, right? Entered into the structure. When I was working in a program here locally that, was very close to some of the like youth basketball, youth sports training space. And, dear friend, my man, Deloney, would always talk about, like, don't be telling me about you, the number one 8th grader in America. Ain't no such thing as the number one 6th grader in America. He's number
Right.
4, whatever. Like, but this was like these are real ideas. Like, you can go probably throw on YouTube right now and go, like, I want to see the number one,
Right.
what's the name, in South Carolina, or you name it, state. And it's stuff that folks are doing in the name of like developing exposure or building a thing, but it's like, yeah, you should just be working on being an athlete, maybe, and then like we'll figure out where you like if you're exceptional in your capacity in the sport that you play. So it's definitely a difference, sort of, in just general sports culture, right? That like the sports culture that like it's pervasive within basketball, but I don't think it's too far away in some of the other sports. But like that you are either preparing to like go to the next level, or you're wasting our time. You know what I mean? And then you got there's money, like there's you can find plenty of videos talking about like how much it costs sometimes to go to like a AAU weekend tournament, right? Because they're charging a lot of money, and it's like which you'd be like, that's my kids in there. Like I'm going, like it ain't like somebody else is coming.
The child is the child is the product.
Like I'm gonna see my kid play. Like why my guy pay, $70-$80 or whatever. So it's interesting, man. I think and it tries to ask the question, like, are we like, I think as a in the United States, we have become highly efficient at locating every tall, goofy kid that maybe wasn't playing basketball and getting them on a court. Like, at some point there's that, and then you still have the kids who like, I like basketball and I start playing basketball and I earn my, one, there's lots of space because to play basketball and then other sports, but especially basketball in a competitive way, but just in terms of the like this like treadmill of what's his next level? Like, yeah, we got to get him working on this so then he can go to this and then he can go to that. And it's like, maybe is this working? Like we're not. I mean, like if Anthony Edwards, the one hand we do have Anthony Edwards, Halliburton, and Anthony Edwards definitely in terms of like not just playing good but also being fun, like being somebody that like, this guy's entertaining. Like he's a curious character. Brunson is full U.S. product. He's a generational basketball product, right? In that sense, right? So there's a tradition model there. I don't know if people don't. I haven't had anybody come up with effusive praise of like Brunson. He's so charming. The way he goes out there and does that back down and crosses a guy over awkwardly to the left side because he's left-handed shooter. Like nobody goes, ooh, like, right. So like from a star power, like in charismatic perspective. So, but
I say Brunson is the kind of player that like why New York matters. Like if Brunson was playing in Utah and giving people 30 and 40 a night, they'd still probably be 7th in the Western Conference because they would just be that good, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't see him that often.
Yeah.
You'd see him at 10. If the game would start at 9:30 on a Wednesday night, and you wouldn't see him when they were playing Dallas, Utah and Dallas. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, New York is why it's important. Like, because Jalen Brunson can become a star.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, a bona fide star only in New York. Like, there is only certain places that happens like that. But I think you did also touch on, if I could say, a basketball pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one guy taught in the Canadian leagues, which, again, very much like European leagues, they identify the kids that's really good early. You know, Toronto, they've had basketball teams for 30 years now, right? So they
basketball was a in Canada, I believe.
You know what I mean? It's been in there. So it's in the ecosystem. You know what I mean? You got a Halliburton that's with a great coach, and the sum is more of his part. So you just have a unique kind of structure. But yeah, I mean, Brunson came up under a dad who not only played at a high level, but coached at a high level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's just something about the game. My thought starts to be, what happens to everybody else?
Yeah.
Right? Like these players that are here, they're here for a particular reason. But like, that doesn't feel like American basketball, high school, and even these like intermediate leagues, which goes into the other piece of like NIL, right? And I want to get your take on how you think about NIL. I have two kind of spaces of NIL. First, the person wants to be fair in all sciences of life. So the idea that young people were used and not compensated, and many of them did not even get their degree, especially if you're talking about professional basketball or football. If they didn't go to the NFL, they probably did not get their degree. Mm-hmm. And the colleges became economic powerhouses. So it is right and fair. Obviously, like most things in capitalism, there'll just be winners and losers that kind of connect with what you already thought in the NIL game, mm-hmm. right? Like, now companies are recruiting like commissioners. They're recruiting all kind of high-powered business folks to be the general managers. So at some point, there's going to be a $1 million job as general man, if there's not already in certain places. There is at Duke, there is at Alabama, $1 million job to like be the general manager, mm-hmm. to raise money and to do this kind of stuff, right? And one of the points that was made that was interesting about this new world. So that's how I feel about that. Like, I'm happy for Black folks and other folks to be getting paid. The fan in me, this makes college basketball kind of weird, and it ends up kind of it's going to make the pros kind of weird. Here's what I mean. If you notice, there's been less of the whole mid-major thing really happening in the last couple of years since NIL has been put into effect. And the reason is, any mid-major team that's halfway good, that player is being recruited to the next college the next year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's the reason that the SEC and what's the league that Baylor and Big 12?
Big 12, yeah.
Is the reason that they never won in basketball, right? You never really saw big SEC and Big 12 teams win in basketball. It was an East Coast thing or West Coast thing. Arizona, UCLA, right? Coming east, folks on the coast, and then, to Chicago. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There'd only be a couple, like, Kentucky, Kansas, Alabama for a stretch with like the Nolan Robinson went like, but like the league. Yeah. I'm saying like the league is Arkansas, not Alabama. The league itself would be like, they play basketball there.
Right. Kansas has always had it. Right. Yeah. But the league themselves, like, you never wanted to watch the Big 12 championship. Yeah. Never wanted to watch the SEC championship. Where now they're usually one or two of the teams in the SEC in the finals now.
Yeah.
You never hear about them guys ever again that play for these teams. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because, again, for their families, it's great. For basketball, you're a fifth-year senior at 24. you've been to 2 JUCOs and 3 other colleges.
Right. Yeah. There's a part of the reason why maybe you're winning these games is because you're like adults. You're like grown.
Yeah,
You're
like
like
you
full
now have
grown. You're more
adults
mature as an
versus
athlete.
children.
Yeah.
Like I think the idea, like much was made last year of Cooper Flagg like being 18. And he was like sometime the youngest person in the game.
Right. Yeah, he was, for real.
Right. So that is a shift, which I think is producing a NCAA space that, again, you have good teams. Any mid-market team is getting folks snatched. So you don't see the Cinderella thing that can appear in the same way. That'll start to melt. And when players are coming into the game, it was cool that you was a 25-year-old senior, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you're a 26-year-old coming into the league.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's so I got a couple thoughts about that. One is the like, college basketball, like when you don't watch it a lot and then you watch it again and you see like, oh yeah, I forgot they got the weird shot clock, and then like the fouls and the halves can go all the, how long the possessions can be, and then you remember teams that have like more talented players, like players who have demonstrated their baseline is higher, but their understanding of how to win the game is different.
Right.
And they're playing against each other. But then you have this deal, basically, I think it was the players when Miami made that run to, I think that they get to I don't think they got to the Final Four. They made that Larinaga team a couple, like 2 years ago. And one of the guys like went to another team or was, thinking about staying because of how much they were going to pay him. But it was some kind of, I can't remember his name, but and it was like, I think we're going to have this thing now where there's like good college players, but like these players are not going to the NBA.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to, like, and some of them, I guess, in the past wouldn't have either, but they also maybe would have went overseas or somewhere else sooner, and they're going to stick around. Like they're going to make a couple transfers and maximize their like 6 years of time to be able to play college basketball, which if there's a part of college basketball that's still supposed to be sort of about like, I'm a Tar Heel, I'm a Terrapin,
Right.
this is my team. Like, go Pitt. Like, do I want Pitt to like dive in here? I don't know who Pitt's gracious benefactor would be, but if we had one, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're like, yo, go get some players for Pitt, like turn Pitt to a basketball with this nice stadium, turn this into a monster. But the players themselves are not like, they're not part of some sort of other tradition. They're just, coming in and they're rotating out, and then what's my next deal, which is a strange set of circumstances for just given the context that they are supposed to be student athletes. Like, and I'm all on board with like students getting paid for their time, but then it's also like, I think coupled with sort of like the way basketball as a sport is being played in the US, where you see, again, this developmental break, and then you end up with the players that are maybe more physically gifted or have had more time and structure than like funneling into like the same pools. And I don't, it's like, I was like, I don't know if it's good or it's bad, but it's definitely strange. It's definitely hard to track. It's definitely hard to like, to separate the idea that like, well, I don't, even Cooper Flagg this season, I think very rarely, I think we will more often now almost go back to a time when we didn't, like, we know who may have the most potential of going to the next level, but not actually know which American players are really good and ready to play when they get to the league.
Right.
Because if you look at the Thompson twins, especially Amin, who was at Houston, And when I first really got this, like hearing about how many Thompson could play, and then I saw some games. I was like, oh, but him and his brother were with the overtime elite thing and the kind of alternative path world that, in a sense, sort of potentially almost derailed their pathway to the NBA. And you wonder what stuff in their development would be different. But then I saw, especially in this playoffs, I was like, that kid's going to be good. That kid's going to figure it. He's figuring some things out, and you wonder is it on college campuses, the sort of abdication of coming up with a really comprehensive plan by the NCAA that's supposed to be the governing body and kind of trying to find Congress or somebody else to save them. And so instead of saying talking, having a their administrative authority to actually sit down and go how does this work? What is our goal as a sport? How does this work developmentally? How does this tie into what we're doing, and with the relationship and the preservation of the sport as a quality and as a thing that matters culturally to America, to the people, and not just this product, not just this activity that by proxy of participating in it, you also get paid. And if it's going to a place where it just will, either you have to really be into it so you can track what the hell's going on, or you're just gonna be I just watch the NBA.
Well,
or I don't watch it all.
Outside of the Kentucky Pipeline and Duke, right now, there's not a lot of other teams in college basketball where you're oh, they came from there. In college football, you're oh, that's an Alabama guy. That's a Georgia guy. That's a Penn State guy. That's a you know what I mean? You can watch it a little more. You don't have that anymore. And that's why a lot of the guys, they're going to be one and done, but now they're picking Duke because now they get a 1-year entry into the rest of the whole brotherhood and benefits of being a Duke player, right? Mm-hmm. So it's actually really interesting and very kind of smart. You might not get the most money, but let's assume you get in and get to the NBA. Now you're
and Duke probably puts up together so you can keep coming to Duke to finish your degree as your
they put you
and whatever
as part of something. You know what I mean? Where it's the rest of them, people yo, how much can I pay you? How much long can you stay? And you're also starting to see these guys that can't really stay anywhere. So again, they end up, and I guess on one level that's fine if you made $200,000 a year playing basketball and assuming you got your degree or you made some sort of effort towards that could be a life-changing and family-changing thing. So I don't want to, I don't want to look down on that, right? In the context of the sport, if you're thinking from a collective perspective, again, it's why any of the really young players of kind of the last couple of years, it's been Wembanyama and Stephen Castile, these guys that are from France. That you oh, wow, that guy's really good. Because they've been playing longer, playing structured, and now this is the thing, right? And then the other one piece I'll play into is that you see it in the NFL, but you definitely now see it in the NBA of players who were the children of players.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you didn't really have that for a long time. So now the best player isn't the guy that emerged out of the ghettos of Baltimore. Right. That was our stories before, right? LeBron was the last story like
that. Yeah, we don't have
you know what I mean? Before it's oh man, this guy was from a rough neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? They show the neighborhood and show bullets flying down and shit.
It's a lot going on in this neighborhood. A lot of folks, a lot of young people losing their lives here.
Man, cops ain't coming. One of them situations where now the stuff is structured. A lot of these guys, the kids is going to be in the league in the next couple of years. Is all sons of ball players. The Arenas, the Boozers, right? When Stojakovic's son go from, he was at Cal, I don't know where he's at now, but you know what I'm saying? You're going to see that kind of player that, again, they at least get to the league because of skills, but a lot of these other people, they get the benefit of being paid and not simply playing in school, but I think it has come at the challenge of American basketball. And I think like a lot of systems, we get used to like we innovated it and then stop innovating on the system. Like the youth leagues are still the same youth leagues as they were 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, but nothing else is like what you did 30 years ago, except,
mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And so training, skill sets, all the above, I think is going to be really, really interesting. And our last thing I'll say about this is like, I think often about the relationship of basketball as this kind of system now as related to like soccer, right? And like why certain teams are so good in soccer is because they have a farm team that identifies you when you're 6, right? Like, and people have figured out that you're good and they give you stuff and they give your family stuff. And on the, outside, what's the name, that you get a huge contract, you give them, you pay back into them, and then you start on your process, right? So it's just going to be interesting just thinking about when you have other systems that are constructed differently to produce more of a product. And your point right now, the NCAA and the way it's structured is not structured for a product of high quality college basketball players. Yeah. It is a set of it's a program that has a set of stuff happening that might be exciting for March Madness, but not necessarily feeding up. And Overtime Elite, I've watched a couple of documentaries. I've seen some of the funders and some of the real reasons why they did develop, because they would be able to come out and just be like, hey, we have some money for you, so you don't get the young person is always like, I'm going to this school, and then they have an academic problems and they can't go to the school, and then they become, kind of like one of those cautionary tales. So I do think Overtime Elite is good for that. Again, is it still about producing the product that feeds into the sport, or the kid that makes $100,000 and then takes a package and, goes to take a package? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I'll just say that like the open question for me, and again, the world, things have changed, space has changed, but like, we did not have, we had an eye court, but like our old place where we live, most of the time that Freedom was younger and live, but Live has not ever really demonstrated she wants to play basketball. I tried to convince her. I told her she'd be a great defensive guard, but I can't. I've let my children know. I spared them. How you say, second person athletic engagement. But if they are so fortunate to provide me with some grandchildren, not pass it. Them kids is gonna be kicking stuff, jumping over things. They'll be like, hey, come on, it's time to go. Where we going, pop? Time to get up under that rim, young person. You got to work on your. You got to work. You got to move your feet. You know what I'm saying? Here, hold this racket. Like I'm full territorial sports dominance. You know what I'm saying? I let it go for one, but y'all, they're not getting those choices. Like we go, but to say, we grew up in an era of there was like a certain culture. Like even if you didn't play organized basketball, there was like the organization of basketball, in your neighborhood, at the courts, at the rec center, like whatever was your access point, right? And that as a space of recreation. And then that most cities had a basketball culture, right? And then there was there was a space where you was like, you were someone who maybe played basketball, but you were not somebody that was involved. Like, oh no, this person has demonstrated that higher level, so they're like, they're going to the open runs with the college players and all those sorts of things, pro-ams, like these other parts of the sport that we would maybe cite in the past, like things that happened that were maybe a part of developing the way like the talent and the capacity that maybe were not intentional, but they were happening, or they were not intentional at scale, right? They were intentional in that, like Connie Hawkins League, and they was making sure that kids had something good to do so they maybe wouldn't get involved in crime, right? But then from a byproduct of that, you get all these kids that's playing, and then you start finding like kids discover that they're good at, this sport. I'll share offline a conversation about track before we split. But like growing up where I grew up, where we had this powerful track culture,
Y'all
right?
did.
And
Y'all
and
did.
still have, right? Like it's still an aspect. Folks run and they sprint and they do the throws and they do all the things. And then you go somewhere where they just sort of like kind of out there tracking. And you're like, man, what are y'all doing, man? You're supposed to be going hard. Like, what is this, right? And
Yeah, I
and then
trust
so
you.
and then you'd be like, you're like, was I? So was this like? But the thing I'm curious about is there's a place within our community, especially around like access to sports as a vehicle to develop character and experience and be justification for connectivity and community and putting kids, moving young people over here and giving them opportunities that like are crossing over sports, but also a conversation around values and the way you show up in the world and all this other stuff that, I mean, for a while has moved into a different place. But I'm curious about and want to leave open-ended the question of, you know, have we allowed so many sports to kind of turn into almost like more of an achievement space, like a space, like and the developmental piece of like, yo, we got to make sure the kids is involved in something. Part is gone. Have we lost some of the cultural stuff though too, of like regional styles and the and you know the understanding and the total the joy of just of playing and being in competition, but then also like, yeah, you know, that's when my uncle and them's come and they tell us about when they used to play, you know, this school versus that school. And
Right.
it just seems, you know, I don't, you know, I don't want to be that I'm not saying that whatever was better. It's just a question of something, if something has been lost. And then, you know, what would we if there's something from that's different that we want to do? Is there something intentional we want to bring to this space so that when young people, it's like when first time we went to Steubenville and they got that big football stadium in the middle of the town for the high school football, meaning that this means something enough here in this town that it's like, it was like, looked like a 5,000 or 10,000 seat.
Mm-hmm.
It may not have been, but looked like a big bowl to be in a city that, you know, ain't necessarily been on the up and ups economically for a couple generations. Right. That's still an aspect. And I wonder with like basketball, like I feel like there's a space between just like everyday people and enjoying and engaging, and then like the people who play, that has become strange to me. And I'm just sort of curious about what that means going forward. So
yeah, I mean, I'll just say one more thing, and I think you bring up an amazing points that, you know, I often talk about the uniculture that happened to Black America, where, you know, there was a time where you knew everybody by their first thing out their mouth, by the way they wore their clothes, all those kind of things, right? And there was this uniqueness to your point, what basketball players brought to the table. The New York City point guard, that is the field general, the dogged Philly two guard, or, you know what I'm saying, scorer, like these just like ideas, like the Boston point guard. Like, you had all this stuff, like how DT guys shoot. Like, you had all these things that you came into seeing if you played a person from an area, what you assume they did, like the Atlantic City style. How Atlantic City, when they was creating all them guys going to college, like how somebody played like they was from Atlantic City, right? Or like you're talking about, like when you heard Willingboro when we was young, that used to be a thing. When we ran against Rancocas, I was scared shitless. But I didn't know how many of the kids from Willingboro had
was bleeding over the Rancocas.
Yeah, so I'm like, you know what I mean? They told we run against Rancocas Regional. I'm on the maps, like, what the hell is Rancocas? Oh, it's about Willingboro. But the fast motherfuckers, Willingboro. Like, you know what I mean? So but you have that. And you know, there is still some of that, especially in places where you don't see a lot of people move a lot. But I do think in the broader thing, as things become, it's very similar to the stuff we talked about with hip hop, as things become industries, what's gained and benefit and what's lost. NIL, what's gained and what's lost for the NBA and for how basketball is done. What has been gained for young people in their experience versus the role that sports played as part of a broader community and how that looks going forward. So I'm right with you, Just.
All right. Well, we can wrap it up there.
Hey man, you wrapped it up, man. You know, put a bow on that, man.
Put a bow on that thing, and you know, so like I said, we got them right where we want them. You know what I'm saying? We won 2.
Blue skies, baby.
You know what I'm saying? We get this thing done. Get the 2-2. You know what I'm saying? Get the pivotal game 5. You know what I'm saying? Because pivotal, and then you know, we'll see what happens. We got to regain home court, is what they say in the
anybody can be beat. That's the other thing. Anyone can get beat in their own town now. Like
home court doesn't seem to matter.
No, home court does not seem to matter as much as the other stuff. But yes, sir.
With that, we'll say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast. Good Brothers, these Good Brothers, is an individual creation, a coming together that we have been embarking on for some time. That's preparing to spread its own wings. But in any event, you know how to support it. Like, rate, subscribe wherever you listen. Search Justice Rajee on Patreon, become a patron. You can also still buy the old sweatshirt, old t-shirt on actually at AskYourOldhead.com and at Etsy.com. Both of those shops are still up. But in any event, you know, we appreciate you. Please take the best part for yourself. Peace.